The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, learn about the life and the beliefs of the late civil rights leader Bernard Lafayette Jr., who taught the principles of Kingian nonviolence to people across the globe, including right here in Tucson. The new production at Invisible Theater brings the honest words of men in prison to the stage, a preview of Inside Out, Men Behind Bars. And this month's storyteller, Ana Montanez, tells how Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show became a unifying moment among her own family. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. Earlier this month, Dr. Bernard Lafayette Jr. passed away at the age of 85. A leader in the civil rights movement, Lafayette dedicated his life to carrying on the work of his friend and mentor, Martin Luther King Jr. He spread the principles of nonviolence throughout the world, including here in Tucson. AZPM contributing producer Laura Markowitz first interviewed him for Arizona Spotlight in 2009, when he was here to train Tucson youth in the Kingian Nonviolence Legacy program. She interviewed him again when he visited in 2018. The following story includes excerpts from both of those interviews.
Violence is the language of the inarticulate. People don't know how to talk to each other. They stay separated from each other, and they form these false opinions and ideas about each other.
As a black person born in 1940 in the Deep South, Bernard Lafayette Jr. was well aware of the false ideas about people of color that white people used to justify their racism.
I used to spend my time following behind my grandmother. So this time we were catching the streetcar, we call it. In those days, blacks had to go and put their money in the front by the driver. And then we had to disembark and walk on the side of the streetcar to the back door. And we used to have to sometimes run because the conductor, after he got your money, he would close the door and take off with your money. So I was running back there, and my grandmother was running behind me, and she fell. And she was a large woman. And then I reached back to try to pick her up, and then the trolley was moving, and I tried to hold the door, and I felt like a sword had cut me in half. So I felt helpless. And I remember saying this to myself. I said, when I get grown, I'm going to do something about this problem.
After World War II, his parents migrated to Philadelphia, and Lafayette says he briefly joined a gang.
I have not always been nonviolent.
But he found his calling at the American Baptist Theological Seminary. He studied the work of Gandhi.
I was really impressed with the power of nonviolence. It's a resource that you can use in your struggle where you don't depend on any outside objects. In other words, you are fully armed even when you step out of the shower in the morning, with the truth, with courage, with a vision, with a philosophy.
He was also deeply influenced by a book by Martin Luther King Jr. called Stride Toward Freedom.
I actually met him in Nashville when we had our sit-in movement in 1960. Martin Luther King believed firmly that nonviolence was the best way. So we disciplined ourselves according to the philosophy of nonviolence that he taught.
When he was only 19 years old, Lafayette co-founded SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He became a freedom rider and helped to integrate the first lunch counter. In 1962, he and other student leaders decided to take 2 years off from school so they could work full-time for the civil rights movement.
Trying to help black people get registered to vote.
They called it voter education back then. But before Lafayette could get his assignment, he was sent to Detroit to raise bail money for the freedom fighters who'd been arrested in Louisiana. When he finally returned to headquarters in Atlanta, the only opening available was the one that no one wanted, Director of Voter Education in Alabama.
And they had an X through Selma, Alabama, because two other teams of SNCC workers had gone there and returned with the same response. And that was that you can't accomplish anything in Selma, Alabama because the black people are too afraid and the white folks are too mean. They said, well, if you want to go down and take a look at it and see what you think. I said, no, I don't want to take a look at it. I'll take it.
On the night that Medgar Evers was assassinated in Jackson, Mississippi, Bernard Lafayette was attacked by white supremacists.
And that same night that Medgar was killed, I had returned from a mass meeting, and there were two young white fellows, one under the wheel and one under the hood of a car. They approached me, one of them did, and asked for a push. So I said, sure. It was late at night, so I know what it's like when your car breaks down. So I didn't even hesitate. The fact that they were white didn't bother me. So when I got out and bent over, that's when they clobbered me. They clopped me on the head. So I thought that was it. But on a personal, physical level here, when I'm being attacked, what you try to do is search for the humanity in your attacker. So when I was hit the first time, I went down and I rolled on the ground, got up again, and looked at my attacker in the face. And this fellow jumped up and hit me again. I went down. And then the third time. By the time I got up the third time, blood was all over my shirt. And then I saw that what he was hitting me with was the butt of a gun. Then he did point the gun at me. I was searching for his eyes, because we were trained that if you can search for the conscience of the person, maybe you can see the humanity there, and maybe they can see the humanity in you. My neighbor came across the banister, and he had a shotgun. I turned around and faced him and told him, don't shoot.
Why did you say don't shoot?
Said, he would kill somebody, and it wasn't necessary.
Even though another man was pointing a gun at you?
I tried to help save him. And that's what nonviolence teaches. Try and make an attempt to save even those who are attempting to kill you.
Did you ever have contact with your attacker after that?
No, they knew who he was, but no.
Where was the second guy?
He was in the car, and there was nothing wrong with that car. They took off so fast, I didn't know they had gone. The FBI from Mobile told me that there had been a conspiracy. This was after the fact. There were supposed to have been 3 of us killed the same night. Ben Elton Cox in Louisiana, Medgar in Mississippi, and I was supposed to have been hit in Selma.
Even an assassination attempt didn't keep him from continuing the work. Lafayette was jailed 27 times for civil disobedience in the 1960s. He lost friends in the struggle, and then he lost his beloved mentor. On the morning that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, Lafayette met with King to strategize about the Poor People's Campaign. He was also staying at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis.
In fact, I still have my key. He was in 306, I was in 206.
There was a press conference planned for later that day in Washington, D.C., but King told Lafayette to go on ahead without him. King had decided to stay in Memphis so he could support the sanitation workers' strike.
The last thing he told me that morning was, Bernard, the next movement we're going to have is to internationalize and institutionalize nonviolence. So I said, okay. 5 hours later, I learned that he was assassinated. I had landed in Washington, D.C. I never had time to mourn his death because there was so much work that needed to be done. The first thing we had to do was have a funeral. So we had to organize. Then we had to go back and complete the demonstration and the campaign for the sanitation workers in Memphis. And then we had to go and do the Poor People's Campaign. Then I had to figure out what he wanted me to do about internationalizing the nonviolence and institutionalizing.
Did you ever have a moment of cynicism or doubt when Dr. King was killed that this great role model and inspiration for nonviolence would end in such a violent way?
I do have those feelings even now that it was such a tragedy. But when we have those dramatic losses, it means that we have to work more vigorously to help develop more leadership. And that's what I'm devoted to and committed to.
And that's what he did for the next 60-some years. Right up to his death on March 5th, 2026, he had never stopped believing in the power of nonviolence to bring about a better world. For Arizona Spotlight, this is Laura Markowitz.
The Culture of Peace Alliance is planning a memorial for Bernard Lafayette in Tucson. Information can be found at cultureofpeacealliance.org. The play that opens on March 26th at the Invisible Theater is not a work of fiction. It's a collection of personal stories from students who are in prison. Inside Out, Men Behind Bars is based on a series of essays collected by U of A anthropologist Linda Green. She was awarded a research grant for the project from the Winter-Gren Foundation for Anthropological Research. The play provides insights into the everyday realities of incarceration. A cast of 4 actors play more than a dozen parts. Inside Out was adapted for the stage and is directed by Invisible Theater's Betsy Cruz Craig. Next, she and cast member Jonathan Harris joined me in the studio with Linda Green on the telephone.
I started teaching anthropology classes at the federal prison in Tucson in the summer of 2023. And after I taught the students, we started talking about how you do anthropological research. And so I wanted to teach them through experience, but we were unable for my students inside to be able to interview anyone, either other inmates or the COs. So then we were able to get permission that we could do something that's called autoethnography. So they would write about their own experiences. So I applied for an anthropological research grant from the Winter-Gren Foundation to do an engaged research project. And so we started the writing. And in that space, I know Betsy. And so I mentioned to her, I wonder if we could do something in theater. She jumped on it right away, and away we went. And so the last summer, my students and I spent about 4 months putting these monologues together. And then in October, I sent it all to Betsy, and here we are.
Jonathan, do you recall when you first met Linda, how you got involved in this project, and what are your recollections of that?
I first met Linda. I'd spoken to her, I think, over email, but when I actually first met her, I was over at Betsy's house. We were sharing a nice little meal, getting to know one another, and she was there. She had a smile from ear to ear the entire time. And it just kind of tickled me pink because she was finally seeing this project that she had worked so hard on, and she's seen it come to life. And it was so nice just watching the joy that she's witnessing, not only in her work, but also she's seeing it through the eyes of the people that also wrote these pieces. And she can tell the amount of joy that they're also going to feel after they get to also see their work being done. And that just kind of stuck with me the entire time. But yes, it was right there when we met over at Betsy's for the first rehearsal.
And what did you think when you read the monologue that you were going to be required to deliver?
It was relatable and also very powerful. So it's about a son. And, how many of us can't relate to a family member, a child, somebody that we miss, specifically me, for example, who I'm new father. I got a 2.5-year-old son right now. And just reading the words, I put myself in the place of this person who happens to be incarcerated. And I tell myself if I were writing this to my kid, how it would make me feel. And, it breaks your heart. It breaks your heart knowing that there is a lack of communication, between family members, particularly in this case, between a father and a son.
Betsy, when Linda came to you with the idea for this project, what was foremost in your mind about making Inside Out ready for the stage?
I have a deep desire and a deep core principle that theater should do more than just entertain. There's a theater practitioner named Augusto Boal who has a theory called the theater of the oppressed. Boal was tortured and kicked out of South America for his work. It was considered so subversive to give everybody an opportunity to have a voice. For me, that is a really incredibly powerful part of theater. And so when Linda brought this project to me, I said, yeah, because I feel like we have a responsibility when you have a platform and you have an existing audience to follow that thread and give a voice to definitely an oppressed faction in society. When I went into the prison to talk with these guys, I laugh about how many mistakes I made. I did everything wrong the first time I went in. I told them my name and I swore but I was asking them to be vulnerable. We ask actors as directors to be vulnerable. And I think about how hard that is for them, because vulnerability is not something that is nurtured or encouraged. It is absolutely discouraged in the penal system. And so the fact that we have been able to put this piece together using their own words is quite incredible. And I'm really proud of this work. It's something that we're talking seriously about, continuing projects like this and serving other unserved voices in our community.
And Linda, I'm going to assume you were one of the first people, if not the first person, to read these essays, these monologues. Reading these essays as they came in, what kind of takeaway did you develop from that? What sort of shape did their voices create?
We worked on these over 4 months so that they didn't just write them and came out whole, right? Just like with any writing, over and over and over again. So I was able to be both a witness and a teacher, if you will, as they worked through what they themselves wanted to communicate. And then we worked on what themes, what are the key things we want people to know on the outside. And so I wanted to just back up and tag what Betsy said about public theater to talk about public anthropology, because, most of the research and data that we do, even these autoethnographies, go into publications, but it's a very specialized audience. So the idea that we can translate the ideas and these people from their research into a public theater really allows people on the outside, a wider audience, to understand what we have found, what we're trying to get at as anthropologists.
Jonathan, and your takeaway from these essays, what do you think the picture that is formed from these pieces might look like?
So when people think of somebody that's incarcerated, they think of the term caged animal. And in fact, we're making sure that people understand that there's a human being, here. There is a lot of humanity. These people, are your brothers, your sisters, your neighbors, your friends, your family. This is, it's no surprise, that a large percentage of people, within the United States, particularly as well people of color, have a family member or somebody that has been involved in the penal system. It's something that maybe we hide at times, It's not something that we parade around, but we want to make sure that we understand that, it's not rare, and in fact, we have to understand that the people in there are human beings. They have feelings just like anybody else. They want to still maintain that connection, and instead of wearing them down completely, to the nub, we want to make sure that they come out and they realize that there's people out there that still care for them. When we really put it all together, we're seeing that these people are human beings. Unfortunately, people label them as other stuff.
Betsy, as the director and as a dramatist, what was important to balance in this piece?
When you do a piece like this, I think there is a preconception of what it's going to be. Popular culture with things like Orange is the New Black and, of course, Oz so many years ago. That is what I didn't want this to be. I wanted it to be real, and I wanted it to be vulnerable, and I wanted an audience to experience people in a completely different situation than most of them probably have ever been in their lives, and to do it in a way that was believable, not sensationalized, simple, clear, and direct. This piece is not a condemnation of the system, although obviously subtextually that probably comes through. It is really an opportunity for these individuals, these incarcerated students, to express themselves in a way that they probably have never had an opportunity to do since they've been incarcerated. I really just wanted it to feel real and honest. And we have a great cast. I'm very happy with the way the structure of the piece worked out. And I think we're inching closer and closer to being ready to share that with an audience that I hope will be very surprised by what they come and experience.
And in closing, Betsy, how can listeners who are intrigued by this project find this play and experience it?
There are 4 performances at the Invisible Theater running from March 26th through the 29th. If you'd like more information or would like to purchase tickets, and we'd love to have you come and witness this, you can find more information at www.invisibletheater.com, or you can call our box office, 520-882-9721.
Linda Green, Betsy Cruz-Craig, and Jonathan Harris, thank you all for spending time with us and telling people about Inside Out, Men Behind Bars at the Invisible Theater. There's something very powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It gives a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new connections with anyone who might be listening. In support of this important community tradition, Arizona Spotlight features a different storyteller on the third Thursday of every month. Here's Tony Paniagua to introduce our storyteller.
Thank you, Mark. Our storyteller this month is Ana Montanez, who moved to Tucson in 2017. Montanez is employed as a sales executive, and she's also passionate about telling stories, writing poetry, performing monologues, and stand-up comedy. Montanez was born in Mexico and raised in California. While growing up, she and her sister became huge fans of Star Trek and both used the television show to learn the English language. In this account about her childhood decades ago, you'll hear connections to controversial current events relating to immigration raids and the Super Bowl's halftime show with Bad Bunny. Here is this month's special guest.
My name is Ana Montanez, and my story is called Joy. I learned early on how to find joy in the little things. When you're poor and you've just arrived from another country, everything takes priority over joy. You find it wherever and, frankly, whenever you can. I was 4 when my family and I left Michoacan, and we settled in our new home in Compton, California. It was the mid-'80s, and yes, that's the 1900s, kids. We moved in with my godmother and my uncle. My father was actually already staying with them at the time, so my mother, sister, and I made for a household of 6, living in a 2-bedroom trailer. And it wasn't a double wide. I understood immediately that we were starting over. We had nothing. Our first trip to the grocery store, my mother gathered a couple of basics. Things that we were, used to eating. Have you ever seen the Bimbo toasted bread? It kind of looks like giant croutons. We would have a slice of it every morning with our smoothie, when we lived in Mexico anyway. I think my mom was just trying to comfort us with familiar foods. But these groceries were on borrowed money. So my uncle grabbed it off the conveyor belt and removed it altogether. He said, "We have bread at home. They can toast that." Everything felt foreign, felt alien. The people looked different, spoke different languages I'd never heard before. Life was nothing like I was used to. My mother worked 14-hour days at the tortilleria down the street where the temperature in the kitchen was so hot, the rubber soles of her shoes melted. My father worked 3 shifts. He'd come home in between jobs and simply nap. He could never take a full night's sleep. He worked nights as a security guard in Santana. So my mom actually gave us the second bedroom. My godmother and my uncle had the primary room already. So my parents were left to sleep on a mattress in the living room. They would put it on the floor to sleep and then lift it against the wall when they went to work. Even in the midst of this world of sacrifice, confusion, and never-ending work, we managed to find joy. Sometimes, when we were lucky and Mom and Dad were off at the same time, we'd put on music at home, and my mother would dance with me. Sonora Dinamita would blast, and she would twirl me all around the living room as one of our favorite songs reminded us. Oye, abre tus ojos, mira hacia arriba, disfruta las cosas buenas que tiene la vida. Hey, open your eyes, look up, enjoy the good things in life. And for those few minutes, we felt happy. For those few minutes, my mother smiled, and everything felt brighter. Maybe that's just a part of being Latin American. We manage to find joy even while we sacrifice and suffer. I've watched family work 14-hour days in construction, in the fields, washing dishes, and cleaning homes. And we still dance when we get the chance. Maybe that's why we were moved to tears when we watched Bad Bunny show this part of our collective identity on a national stage. For those 13 minutes, despite being hunted like animals and vilified, while still doing the most menial jobs in this country, we found joy. I don't know how our story ends, if I'll be able to keep living my life in the country I now consider home. But in the meantime, I remind myself to open my eyes, look up, and enjoy the good things in life.
Ana Montanez describes herself as a daughter, sister, stepmom, dog mom, and work mom. She says she finally sees herself as her partner does, strong, brave, and beautiful. For more than 5 years, Montanez was the executive director of Odyssey Storytelling, where she still volunteers. We'll have links to this and other storytelling opportunities on our website. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. Production assistance by Sarah Ariano. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.